There's an extraordinary cycle, in fact a unique cycle in Earth's history that has started here at the 1st of January 2025, will run for the next 12 years, so to the end of 2036. And if you're a spiritual person, it will be a great advantage for you to understand the cycle, to know more about how it works and how you can take advantage of it. Because the cycle is both an opportunity and a challenge. So if you understand what it's about, if you decide to be part of this cycle, then it's an extraordinary opportunity for spiritual growth that basically we haven't had on Earth in recorded history. But if you don't understand it, or if you resist it, or decide not to take advantage of it, it will be an extraordinary challenge. And you will see this in many people who are not open to anything spiritual, or who are not open to improving themselves. Now, what is the cycle exactly? Well, in this video I'll describe what the cycle is, what it does, and how to take advantage of it. And I'll make another video where I talk about specifically more about the prophecies that you can base on the cycle of what's going to happen in the world, what's going to happen in society. So we can say this is the more just sort of to give a general understanding of the cycle and how to take advantage of it. And then in the next one I'll talk more about the specific challenges or changes that can happen. So I'm sure most spiritual people have heard about spiritual cycles. The age of Pisces, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. You can talk about many other cycles based on various criteria. But this cycle is not something that's based on some inevitable precession of the heavenly bodies or whatever it may be. It's an extraordinary cycle because it's something the Ascended Masters decided to inaugurate based on their observations of how the spiritual people on Earth and many other people have raised their awareness. So the Ascended Masters, as I explained in many of my videos, are the universal spiritual teachers for humankind. They're always monitoring the Earth, and they're especially monitoring the collective consciousness and how it's being raised up by people raising their individual consciousness. So the concept the Masters are given is that we're all part of the collective consciousness. And many people, most people on Earth, are really sort of weighed down by the collective consciousness, pulled down by the collective consciousness, blinded by the collective consciousness. But more and more people over the last several decades have been waking up and pulling themselves above the collective consciousness by increasing their knowledge, their awareness, even raising their consciousness, using spiritual teachings and techniques. Many of these people don't know about Ascended Masters, but that's not what the Masters are concerned about. They are simply concerned about is there raising of the consciousness. And what do they mean with raising consciousness? Well, I've explained in many of my videos, including my video about how the world was created, that everything is created out of what you can call the one mind, or the Christ mind, or the Buddha nature. So, as human beings, we have two general states of consciousness we can be in. We start out, when we're new, we start out having a certain sense of connection to something outside our own minds, and we grow in awareness by increasing that sense of connection. But we also have the option to go into separation, where we deny that connection. Now our minds become closed systems, and that's when we create all of these belief systems, ideologies, religions, what have you, that you see on Earth, that are limited. They're out of touch with the reality of how the world works. It's something that human beings have created in their minds. And it's not that there's anything necessarily wrong with this, but of course all the suffering that's created on Earth is created through this illusion that we're separate beings and we can do to other people what we don't want them to do to us and get away with it. So when the Masters talk about spiritual growth or growth in awareness, they're talking about there are more and more people who are tuning in to this one mind, this unifying mind that is behind everything. And so you can call this, at the lower stages, personal Christhood. At higher stages, you can call it enlightenment, personal Buddhahood, or other things. So what is happening with this 12-year cycle is that the masters have decided, starting with the archangels actually, to release an extraordinary amount of spiritual light, you can call it the Christ light, into the energy field of Earth. And it has a number of different effects, but one effect can be compared to, let's say you have a dark mine where people are living underground in darkness. And when you increase this Christ light, it's like increasing the light in the mine. Suddenly it becomes easier for people to see what's going on. And there was things that could hide in the dark before that can't hide any longer. So they are being exposed. But it also means, of course, that when the light is increased, you have the option, if you're willing, to you can compare the light to a wave, and you can ride the wave. You can get up on a surfboard, which is your personal psychology, your personal state of mind. You can ride that wave of energy that's being released. Those who don't do that, the wave will wash over them, and it will become very turbulent, and it will challenge many of their assumptions they have about life and what life should be. So what the Master is saying is this light in itself, the increase of the light, will precipitate a lot of extraordinary events, a lot of different events. And there will be some upheaval in society. For example, there will be people, institutions, nations, ideologies, ideas, belief systems that people thought were going to be there forever, and suddenly they will be challenged by this light, and some of them will disappear, others will be diminished. There will be exposures of all kinds of things that have been hidden, like people who have been manipulating others, people who are deliberately hurting others, or even there will be the exposure of a hidden power elite that has attempted to control the population, even in democratic nations. So there will be many effects of this, and that's why the Masters are saying that for those of us who are willing, we can ride this wave, but we need to take a look at our expectations about what life should be on Earth, and we need to be willing to let go of some of these, because I know for myself, for example, before the pandemic, Corona pandemic, I very much had this idea that we were moving into a better age. I've talked about the golden age of Saint Germain in several videos, and it was my hope that this would happen very gradually, very smoothly. And then the pandemic came, the war in Ukraine, and I had to reevaluate this. I simply had to step back, and I had to say, I had an unrealistic view of this, because I had sort of thought that, yeah, but the Earth is gradually moving forward, and therefore there will be these incremental changes. And of course, this is one possible scenario, that there can be incremental changes, but that would require people to really be willing to raise their awareness. And obviously, when you look at it realistically, most people on Earth are not really willing to raise their awareness. They actually cling to status quo. They want to live the way they live because they're comfortable with it, and they just want to continue living that way. So what I realized is that you can say, if we were going to have a better age on Earth through these incremental changes, it would take a very long time. So in order to have this within a reasonable time frame, that we shift from the current state of the world into a decisively better state, it will have to be sped up. And this will mean that there will be some abrupt things that, because you could basically say, what is it? What is it that determines whether the Earth can move into a better phase? It's actually, as I said, the collective consciousness. And there is an enormous resistance in a collective consciousness to change, to something new. People tend to cling to what they know, cling to status quo. And they're not very open to new ideas. So you could basically say that the Earth is here currently. In order to manifest a higher age, a higher golden age, it's very far up there. There are some really big shifts that will have to happen in people's minds for them to be able to accept that the Earth could be better than it is, that the Earth could go into a positive cycle. and that we could leave some of these big problems behind, like war, poverty, conflicts, manipulation, and all of this stuff. There's a lot of shifts that will have to happen. So in other words, you could say, if you step back from it, you could say that most people in the world have this, they see themselves kind of like passive recipients. Things just happen that are beyond their control. But what the Ascended Masters teach here is that everything that happens in the physical is an outplaying of what's happening in the collective consciousness. And therefore, if we are to manifest a higher age, a better age, there'll have to be some big shifts because, just to take an example, that many of us have experienced in our lifetime. I mean, I grew up before computers. Well, there were computers, but they were not generally known, certainly not personal computers. So just imagine the immense changes that have happened over the last, 30, 40 years in terms of the spread of personal computers and the internet and all of this, what this has meant. But then you can look at, there are people in the world who could afford a computer, but who don't want a computer. My mother, for example. She couldn't make the switch. She couldn't learn to use a computer. Or rather, she didn't want to. So what I'm saying is, in order for the computer age to be brought in, an enormous amount of people had to accept, yes, I can learn how to use a computer and I want to. And it's the same thing with other changes. You could say, we want a better society, a more free society. We have to accept this. We want a better form of democracy that isn't run by a small power elite, where people have to accept that they then have to take responsibility for our societies and participate in the democratic process, and many other things like that. So I'm just saying, in order for this age to be, or in order for this 12-year cycle to be successful, those of us who are the spiritual people, the most aware people, we have to be willing to raise our consciousness. Because we are the forerunners. We are the ones who are pulling up on the collective consciousness, and we cannot allow ourselves in this coming cycle to be pulled down by the collective consciousness. Because as I said, the light, it's not that the light is forcing people to do something, but like the dark mind, when the light is increased and people begin to see what is actually was hidden in the dark, the question is, will they accept it? Will they accept what it means? Will they be willing to change based on what they see? So the light isn't forcing people to make choices, it's actually giving people the opportunity to make choices because now they see what they didn't see before. But the acceptance of this depends on whether those who are the most aware people, whether they can make the shift and whether we can accept the changes. So that's why we have to do two things. We have to look at our expectations of how we expect that society should be and how we expect changes should happen. For example, as I said, we can't expect it's always going to be smooth sailing. There will be some abrupt things that are going to have to happen to shake people out of their clinging to status quo. Then we have to also realize that this cycle, it will bring upheaval, which means that for many people this will seem like a threat. As I said, they'll want to cling to status quo. And that means that many people will go into a downward spiral. You have seen this with the corona pandemic, how some people are going into a very downward spiral, very negative attitude towards many different things. And this will be worse in the next 12 years. So if we are to be forerunners, we who are the more aware people, we have to do everything we can. We have to be very determined. We will not be pulled into this downward cycle. We will not become negative. We will not have a pessimistic outlook on life. We have to realize one simple thing. It's the old saying, it will get worse before it gets better. And this is because, as I said, the light will start to shake things up. And you can compare it to a woman who is giving birth. Obviously, it's very, very unpleasant to give birth, and she seems to be in great agony. But then the child is born and everything shifts. So this is what we have to keep in mind, that this is like birth pains for a better age. And we can either be pulled down by it, whereby we actually contribute to the downward spiral and resist the light, or we can allow ourselves to be pulled up by the light. But in order to do that, we have to be positive. And we have to actually consider a topic I've talked about in several videos, namely a life plan. In other words, before we came into this embodiment, we met with our spiritual teachers and we created a plan. And it has two aspects. One is, what personal growth did we want to achieve in this lifetime? Or in other words, how much did we want to raise our awareness and our consciousness? And number two, what gift did we want to bring to Earth, to society, to our families, or whatever it may be individually? And so what we basically, in order to ride this wave, we have to make an effort to tune in intuitively to this life plan. And the principle we can apply there is actually an old spiritual saying, as above, so below. So in other words, you have your outer personality here. You have had so far a certain view of life, what your life should be, what life on a planet should be. And it may not be in alignment with what you put in your life plan before you came into embodiment, where you had a broader perspective. So it's important to bring your outer mind, your conscious mind, into alignment with what you put in your life plan. So you can be as above, so below. You're not working against your own divine plan. And in order to do this, what is it we have to do? Well, first of all, we have to look at this. We can use the illustration that you're on a surfboard. You're in the ocean on your surfboard. Your surfboard is actually your personal psychology, your mind. And you look behind you, there's a wave coming. And it's about to roll over. And so what do you have to do? Well, first of all, you have to accelerate yourself up to a certain speed. And then you have to get up on the surfboard. But once you're on the surfboard, what do you have to do to ride the wave instead of crashing? You have to stay balanced. Because if you lean too far to one side or the other side, you're going to fall off the surfboard and the wave is going to roll you around and pull you down, and it's going to be very turbulent. And the only way to stay on the board and ride the wave is to be balanced in your personal psychology. And that means you have to really, well, first of all, you have to make a conscious decision to not allow yourself to pulled into the negatives. One of the things we do when we tune into the Christ mind is we actually get a balanced perspective, because the one mind, the Christ mind, the Buddha nature is balanced compared to what I call the duality consciousness, where there's always these two opposite polarities, right and wrong, good and bad, and they are pulling you. And you see it in the world, how many people are being pulled into taking a more extreme, unbalanced position. And what do I mean with unbalanced? Well, I basically mean that you are not taking responsibility for yourself and your state of mind. You are blaming something outside of yourself for your conditions in life, your experience of life. So you see many people today who are being pulled into, for example, conspiracy theories. Oh, there is this evil conspiracy that's the cause of all of our problems. Or these other people, this other group of people, or this other nation are the cause of our problems, so we have to go to war with them. And this is what you've seen throughout history. So what we have to do in order to ride the wave is to stay there and realize that we're not victims of anything here. We have the opportunity to take command of our own psychology. In fact, the next 12 years, it's an extraordinary opportunity to take command over your own mind and raise your level of consciousness towards higher and higher levels of integration with the one mind, with your higher self. And this is done, as I said, partly by deciding you're not going to be pulled into this. Never mind all these conspiracy theories. If they are disempowering, you don't bother with them. But you also have to look at why do you have a tendency to be pulled in either this direction or that direction. And this is what Jesus actually taught about 2,000 years ago, where he said the prince of this world cometh and has nothing in me. And the prince of this world can be explained in different ways, but you can explain it as the collective consciousness that's pulling you to conform, to be like everybody else. And what makes it possible for this to pull on you is that you have some unresolved psychology, you have some unbalanced psychology. I talk about this in many of my videos, talk about these subconscious cells that we have in our subconscious minds that are based on this duality consciousness, the sense of separation. And this is what makes us unbalanced, and then the collective consciousness can pull us into becoming even more unbalanced. Just look what happened after the corona pandemic. Do you know people personally who were pulled into being unbalanced? Were you perhaps yourself pulled towards being unbalanced? Then you need to do what you can to swing back. And the next 12 years is an incredible opportunity to do that. I have given many talks about this in my videos, but I also have all of my websites that has an enormous amount of material on there available for free on how to resolve your psychology, basically. There are, of course, many more valid teachings about this, from traditional talk therapy to all kinds of alternative psychologies or healing methods. So if you are willing to make use of whatever appeals to you, you can really have a tremendous growth in the next 12 years. But the key there is to balance, always balance, because the Christ mind always seeks to pull you towards balance, whereas the separate mind is always pulling you towards extremes, polarization. The Buddha called it pairs. You can say that this dualistic mind is also what Jesus meant with the prince of this world. So this is very, very important. Now, it's also important to realize that as part of this growth, it's important to begin to express yourself. And many people are, of course, already doing that. But in the next 12 years, there will be more of an opportunity to express your spiritual beliefs in some way. It may not be spiritual beliefs as such. It may be just, it can be very universal things, like how you change your attitude to life, how you overcome something in your psychology, how you become positive, how you do things better. It can be all kinds of things. But it's just that as part of this growth towards a higher level of consciousness, there comes a point where it's hard to grow higher unless you start expressing it to help others. And as I said, this is an extraordinary opportunity because people will be more open to this in the coming 12 years than they have been before. Many spiritual people, they have always felt that, oh, I can't really talk about my spirituality because people aren't interested. But this will change. People will become more and more interested because more and more people are going to be looking for answers. They are going to be looking for explanations for why all these things are happening. Why does it seem like the world has just shifted and it's chaos? And they will want to find some way to deal with the chaos that gives them a sense of security, a sense of balance, and this is what we can help provide. Now just the last aspect I want to talk about in this video is that this light that is descending, it does have the effect of delivering what we might call the judgment of Christ. And the judgment of Christ works this way. You can say in the dark mind where people can't see what's going on, they can't really clearly, consciously choose between what is separation, what is connectedness, what is doing things that affect other people negatively, or overcoming this state of mind. They can't really choose because they can't see it clearly. But as the light descends, then it becomes easier for people to see it, it becomes harder for people to deny it. In other words, many people today are in this state of consciousness where they think, oh, I can harm others, it's not going to affect myself. Or the ends can justify the means. And those who are in this state of consciousness, they will be extraordinarily challenged in the next 12 years. Will they change? Or will they cling to that state of consciousness? And if they cling to that state of consciousness, the light will have the effect that, in a sense, you could say that in order to cling to that state of consciousness, that have to become more and more extreme. So what you will see, and what you can actually already see if you think about this, you can already see that people all around the world are becoming more and more polarized. You see it on social media, it's been going on for years, but you see it in politics, and you will see this increase. But this also means that there are these people, if they become more and more extreme, they can actually hasten the point where they just can't stay in embodiment anymore. They can't stay on the planet. Because there is a correspondence between, there's a certain group of people that are trying to pull the Earth down because they're trying to control the Earth. There's a power elite, as I've talked about in several videos, that are seeking to control people. And then there's what we can call a creative elite of more aware people that are raising their consciousness, that are pulling up. So in the middle you have the majority of the people on the planet, and they are being pulled down by those in the most selfish state of consciousness, and they are being pulled up by those in the most unselfish state of consciousness. But if the people who are pulling up, if we increase the pull, there comes a point where those at the lowest level of consciousness, they can't stay on the planet. They can't stay in embodiment. They're simply taken off. And this is what you will see in the next 12 years. There will be more of this judgment of Christ, and it's not some ominous thing where suddenly Jesus is going to appear in the sky and judge people. You're going to hell, you're going to heaven. People judge themselves by their refusal to accelerate with the light, to flow with the light. And you just have to be prepared for that, because it's another thing that will create upheaval. As I said, because some people, before they are judged, they will act out in more and more extreme and unbalanced ways. And this can be very disturbing to watch, as it has been for many people, watching the war in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, the pandemic, watching, for many people, the political developments in the United States. But it's just a necessary phase until these people have, so to speak, run the line that they have, and then it shifts. So what I'm trying to say in this video, this is an extraordinary opportunity for growth. And the reason why the Ascended Masters are releasing this is to speed up a shift in the collective consciousness. And this shift is basically, if you look back, there was a big shock in the collective consciousness at 9/11, 2001. I still remember, I lived in the United States at the time, and we heard in the office where I was working, oh, a plane flew into the World Trade Center. And first we thought, what happened? Was it just a private plane? But then we heard, no, it's on fire, it's a big plane. So we're literally going over in the break room and looking at the TV, and we saw on TV the second plane fly in. And then later we saw the towers collapse on TV, not knowing how many tens of thousands of people were caught in there. So I still remember what kind of a shock that was for people. And then after that, there was upheaval for a couple of years, and then things settled down. Then in 2008 came the financial crisis, which also was a big shock for many people. But then after that, things settled down. And for many people, at least in the democratic part of the world, it was relatively calm. And people were feeling a certain guarded optimism. But then came the corona pandemic, and the war in Ukraine, and the war in Israel, Gaza, and the election in the US. And all of a sudden, many people are now feeling like they've lost their moorings, they've lost their foundation, the world is just chaotic. They are afraid of what's going to happen. And what the Ascended Masters are seeking to bring about in these next 12 years is that this pessimism is replaced by the acceptance that the Earth has turned an important corner and has moved into, or is very rapidly moving into, a better age. In other words, that people shift from pessimism to optimism. And it's an optimism that isn't unrealistic. It's not based on blindness, it's not based on unrealistic hopes, but it's based on the recognition that the Earth really is moving into a better age. And this again, who is going to bring this shift about? We who are the most aware people. But we can only do it if we stay positive, if we stay balanced, if we ride the wave. So in a coming video, maybe more than one, I'll talk more about what it means to ride the wave, how we can take advantage of this opportunity, also what it will mean for society.